Somewhere inside a building in Woking, England, there is approximately $1 billion worth of automobiles sitting under careful, expert hands at any given moment. Let that number sink in for a second. Not on a showroom floor, not at an auction house, on a workbench, being disassembled, reimagined and reborn. This is McLaren Special Operations, and honestly, most people have absolutely no idea it exists. MSO, as it's known internally, is McLaren's bespoke division, the secretive, obsessive, creative engine behind some of the most extraordinary road cars ever conceived. But calling it a customization shop would be like calling the Sistine Chapel a paint job. This place is something far more profound. It's where engineering becomes art, where a client's imagination collides with 4 decades of carbon fiber mastery, and where the boundary between a car and a personal statement just sort of ceases to exist. The story of MSO doesn't begin in 2011, when it was officially launched to the world at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. It begins much earlier, in the early 1990s, in the shadow of the most celebrated road car ever built, the McLaren F1. When that car landed, customers almost immediately began coming back with requests. Can you do this? Can you change that? Can you make it faster, more aggressive, more personal? And so a quiet, informal customer care division began answering those calls. One of the earliest results was the high downforce kit, a full aerodynamic upgrade developed in direct response to what owners were actually asking for. Those conversations, those small acts of listening and crafting, laid the foundation for everything MSO has become today. And what it has become is genuinely staggering. MSO now operates across 5 distinct tiers: MSO Defined, MSO Bespoke, MSO Limited, MSO Heritage, and MSO Programs. Each one a different depth of creative involvement, from a personalized contrast stitch on a steering wheel all the way up to a fully coach-built one-of-one vehicle constructed entirely in bespoke carbon fiber.
Called the aerocell. Essentially, this is the core of all the W1's aerodynamics. By raising the occupant's legs 80 millimeters,
the range is almost absurd in its scope, and yet every single tier is handled by the same team, with the same standard of precision.
Yes, it's the successor to the F1 and P1. The basics are as follows.
Take the carbon fiber work, for example. McLaren has been working with carbon fiber for over 40 years, longer than almost any other road car manufacturer on Earth. But at MSO, carbon fiber isn't just a structural material, it's a canvas. When the team lays up a bespoke exterior panel, the base structure mirrors the painted version beneath it. But the first cloth to go down is a visual carbon twill, often finished in a herringbone weave that runs the full length of the car. Every compound curve, every shut line, every centimeter of that surface must be absolutely flawless. If there's a single weave distortion, the panel doesn't get corrected. It gets remade entirely, from scratch. That's not perfectionism for perfectionism's sake. That is a team that simply refuses to hand a client anything less than the best version of the thing they imagined. The materials MSO works with extend far beyond carbon fiber. The team has recently completed a fully bespoke interior commission executed entirely in cashmere, an ultra-rare application in an automotive context that speaks to just how far beyond the car world MSO is willing to look. They have analysts actively monitoring the luxury goods industry, the fashion world, fine jewelry, architecture, constantly scanning for emerging materials, textures, and tastes that can be translated into a cabin environment. This is a team that doesn't wait for trends to arrive. They intercept them. And then there's the gold. One of the most iconic details on the McLaren F1, a car currently valued at upwards of 20 to 30 million pounds per example, is the gold foil lining the engine bay. That gold isn't decorative in the traditional sense. It's a thermal management solution, reflecting heat away from critical components with extraordinary efficiency. But it also has to look absolutely perfect. Every sheet, every fold, every seam. Because when you're working on a car worth that much, there is no margin for almost, there is only perfect or not yet done.
4 electric motors drive the rear wing, sending it back 300 millimeters for a virtual long tail effect.
That brings me to what I personally find most fascinating about MSO, the heritage work. Tucked inside their facility is an archive containing over 20,000 original engineering drawings. Through those drawings, combined with decades of institutional knowledge passed down almost like oral tradition, craftspeople who were there when the first F1s rolled out the door, who worked directly with those first clients, MSO is able to restore and preserve McLarens essentially indefinitely. The team working on an F1 restoration today might pivot tomorrow to configuring a brand new W1 for a client. That transfer of knowledge, that living lineage, is something no amount of money can manufacture from scratch. And speaking of the W1, McLaren's most extreme road car to date, the successor to the legendary P1, every single buyer goes through a dedicated session with a bespoke relationship manager. Not a form, not a configurator left alone in a room. A person, a conversation, a relationship. The manager walks the client through paint finishes, material combinations, and surface details using immersive visualization tools.
It is solution possible, and with no seat runners, that means the aerocell is more compact, shortening the wheelbase. It's only a fraction longer than the P1s.
And then, and this is the part I love, sends them a WhatsApp when something new and relevant comes in. In an industry that often hides behind formality and distance, MSO treats its clients like collaborators, because that's exactly what they are.
Race mode drops the car 37mm at the front and 17 at the rear.
Whether you're commissioning your first McLaren or your 50th, the process at MSO pulls every client into the same orbit of excitement. And that's not an accident. It's a philosophy that traces directly back to Bruce McLaren himself, a man his own team famously described not as their boss, but as their colleague. Someone who spent more time on the shop floor than in the boardroom. Someone who cared as much about how something was made as whether it won. That spirit, remarkably, still lives inside MSO's walls today. You can feel it in the way people talk about the work. Not as a job, as a calling. The cars being conceived and built inside MSO right now, wrapped in bespoke cashmere, sheathed in hand-laid herringbone carbon, finished in colors that exist nowhere else on Earth, will be the collectibles of the next generation. The auction highlights of 2040. The cars people will one day stand in front of.
122 bhp per tonne power to weight ratio. You will need a Yesco attack to go.
If this kind of obsessive, behind-the-scenes content is what you're here for, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot more where this came from.